We're beginning a very serious examination today, looking at a set of sources that are both complex, frankly, very disturbing.
They are.
Our focus is on the decade-long criminal activity, the background, and the legal path of the American serial killer and rapist, Shawn Michael Grate.
That's right. What we have in front of us is essentially a collection of documents. We're talking legal filings, biographical notes, police reports.
All of it.
And together, they really map out his known crimes from 2006 all the way up to his capture in 2016. The goal here for you, for the listener, is to really get a full understanding of this case.
To go beyond just the headlines.
Exactly. We're going to detail the 5 confirmed murders that we know of, which spanned 3 different counties in Ohio: Ashland, Richland, and Marion, and then get into the very complicated legal process that came after.
And we have to approach this with the seriousness it deserves. At its heart, this is about the lives of 5 young women that were tragically taken.
Absolutely.
So we're going to stick to the facts as they are reported in these sources, making sure we give an impartial but comprehensive picture of what happened and what finally brought this terrible string of crimes to an end.
I think it's important to understand that timeline right from the start. We're talking about crimes that went unsolved, completely hidden for a decade.
A full 10 years.
From 2006 until that one specific date, September 13th, 2016. That day is the absolute turning point for this entire case. It's the moment everything stopped.
And it stopped because of the actions of one person, an incredibly courageous victim.
Yes. The sources are very clear on this. The entire investigation was blown wide open because of an escape and a 911 call.
Made by a woman who was referred to in all the court documents as Jane Doe.
She made that call from the house where she was being held in Ashland, Ohio. Her unbelievable presence of mind in what must have been the most terrifying situation imaginable is what led the authorities directly to Shawn Grate.
Okay, so let's unpack the biographical facts we have from the sources about Grate. When you're trying to understand a pattern of such horrific behavior, you often have to look at the early life.
Not to excuse it.
Never to excuse it, but to understand the trajectory. So he was born August 8, 1976, in Marion, Ohio.
And right away, the reports suggest this. This unstable foundation that was sort of hidden under a veneer of normalcy.
What do you mean by that?
Well, the sources describe his very early childhood as, quote, normal. You know, he played softball, he socialized with the neighbors, but almost immediately you see these institutional struggles. The records show he was held back in kindergarten.
In first grade, too.
In first grade. So that suggests some pretty significant early challenges that, well, maybe went unaddressed.
And yet, on a social level, he seemed to be doing okay, at least from the outside.
Yes, that contradiction is there right from the start. We have accounts that describe him as charming and amicable.
I read that a female friend from that time recalled that all the girls liked Shawn.
Exactly. So that points to a certain level of social skill. He was able to put on this convincing, non-threatening mask even while these other difficulties were clearly present.
But the sources seem to pinpoint one specific event, a really crushing event, that seems to have destabilized everything for him.
It's the breakdown of his family. It starts with his parents' divorce, Terry Grate and Teresa McFarland. It was finalized just 2 days before his 6th birthday back in 1982.
That's a huge stressor for any child.
It is, but according to these documents, the real trauma came 5 years later. Grate was 11 years old.
And that's when his mother left.
Abruptly, she abandoned the family in Ohio and moved to Kentucky to be with another man.
And the reaction from young Shawn Grate wasn't just sadness, was it? The sources and his own family members describe something much darker.
That's where this analysis becomes truly chilling. His half-sister described the household at that time as a battle. And the sources state explicitly that Grate harbored, and this is a direct quote, murderous fantasies toward his mother from a young age.
So this perceived abandonment, this betrayal, it seems to have fueled a very deep and specific anger.
It really appears that way. It looks like it provided a kind of devastating psychological blueprint for his later actions, which were so rooted in control and specifically violence against women.
If he was carrying that kind of rage inside him, how did he function in a high school environment? Was there anything positive that kept him, grounded?
For a while, yes. He went to River Valley High School, and the sources say he was a good baseball player. He excelled at it.
So he had a structured, positive outlet.
For a time. But that outlet was taken away from him. He broke his arm, and the injury was complicated. During surgery, they discovered a tumor.
So that stabilizing force in his life was just gone.
It seems that way. And its sudden removal appears to have made his existing mental health struggles much worse.
And that's when the people around him, the people closest to him, started noticing some very erratic behavior.
Correct. A high school girlfriend noted this pattern where he would just lie on the couch for days at a time, completely withdrawn, and then he would suddenly snap back to his normal self.
And years later, this was confirmed by experts, right?
Yes. When he was being evaluated for his trial, a court psychiatrist looked at his history and described him as kind of a depressed kid. And he directly linked that depression to the neglect and emotional detachment he experienced in his childhood.
It confirms that long-term psychological impact.
It does.
So we can see this foundation being laid, and it leads directly to his first documented criminal acts, even before he was an adult.
The legal record really starts in 1994. Custody was transferred to his father, and Grate's internal problems started to manifest as physical violence.
The first arrest.
On November 24, 1994, he was arrested for grabbing his girlfriend's throat.
That's a significant marker, an act of intimate partner violence. It establishes a pattern of control that would obviously escalate dramatically.
And it did escalate, and quickly, from that assault to a serious felony.
After he graduated.
Yes, and in October of 1996, he was arrested for breaking into a house in Marion County with a juvenile accomplice. They were stealing jewelry and money.
He got a felony burglary conviction for that.
He did in January 1997. And what's really noteworthy here is the sentence. He was sentenced to 4 years in prison.
But he didn't serve that.
No. He was released early in October of 1997, so he served a minimal amount of time for a felony, and he was back in society with this history of violence and theft before he even turned 21.
And that very short time in prison clearly didn't deter him at all.
It doesn't seem to have had any effect on these deeply ingrained behavioral issues.
It just sets the stage for the next decade, where he was able to operate, it seems, completely unchecked.
That earlier history gives us a kind of psychological framework, but now we have to turn to the definitive end of his crimes, the critical events of September 2016.
And this all comes down to the incredible bravery of the victim known as Jane Doe.
Her actions were the absolute key. Grate was arrested on September 13th, 2016, and it was a direct result of her desperate 911 call from that house in Ashland.
The one at 363 Covert Court.
Yes. For the police, what started as a seemingly routine kidnapping and assault call very quickly unraveled into the discovery of a serial killer.
Let's talk about the initial connection between Grate and this victim. The sources say it wasn't a typical relationship.
No, it seems Grate very specifically designed it to build a false sense of security.
How so?
Well, the victim, a 38-year-old woman, met him in the summer of 2016. They met at the Ashland Salvation Army Community Center.
And their interactions were platonic at first.
Completely. The sources emphasize this. They would share meals, they'd go for walks, they even played tennis, and crucially, they often discussed the Bible.
So he was actively building this image of himself as a friendly, faith-based person.
Exactly. And the sources are clear on this point. Even though he tried to push things towards a sexual relationship, she refused. She wouldn't even give him her phone number.
But he used that trust he'd built to lure her to the house.
Precisely. On September 11, 2016, he convinced her to walk with him to the Covert Courthouse. The excuse was simple. He just needed to get some clothes.
A completely non-threatening reason, designed to bypass her caution.
And it worked. But once they were inside, isolated, that carefully built facade of the charming and amicable man it vanished. Instantly.
What happened then?
The victim was reading the Bible. Grate came back from the kitchen, and in this really powerful symbolic moment, he just snatched the Bible out of her hand.
And told her she wasn't leaving.
He said, "You're not going anywhere." And when she tried to resist, he reacted with immediate and extreme violence. He beat her and strangled her.
And she was then held captive for 3 days. The source material is very sensitive here, but we need to detail the facts of her confinement to understand his methods.
The sources describe a horrific period of captivity. He used restraints, binding her in what she described as various weird positions.
One of which was designed to be self-strangling.
Yes, that detail is particularly chilling. It was a mechanism designed so that if she tried to break free, it would tighten and strangle her. It shows a deliberate, calculated methodology of control and psychological terror.
And over those 3 days, she sustained extensive injuries.
Severe bruising, head trauma, and trauma to her sexual orifices that caused bleeding. Her testimony confirms she was sexually assaulted in every way imaginable.
The sources also mention a very specific, controlling act of humiliation he performed during the assault.
Yes, and this detail, it speaks volumes about his mindset. It was all about dehumanization and control.
He shaved a heart shape into her pubic hair.
He did. This wasn't a random act. It was documented and later confirmed by the sexual assault forensic examiner who collected the hair as evidence. It really reinforces that his actions were about total dominion over her body and her identity. It went far beyond just sexual gratification.
But that horrific ordeal came to an end when she found an opportunity to act.
She managed to make that life-saving 911 call while Grate was sleeping.
And the police arrived while he was still there.
They did. The Ashland police got there quickly and rescued her while Grate was still in the house, asleep. It speaks to the efficiency of their response, but her strength and her will to survive were absolutely the critical factors.
Grate's statements when he was taken into custody, they show that deep psychological disconnect we were just talking about.
His claims were just bewildering. I mean, despite the overwhelming evidence of kidnapping, assault, and torture, Grate insisted he hadn't planned to kill her.
And even more bizarrely,
He claimed they were going to get married.
it's a classic dissociation from reality. He's unable to reconcile the monster he is with this self-image he's trying to maintain. He's rewriting a story of terror into some kind of warped love story.
That's a good way to put it.
And the house itself, 363 Covert Court, became a permanent symbol of the tragedies that were discovered there.
It did. The city of Ashland, recognizing the horrific history tied to that building, acquired the property through a settlement.
And they tore it down.
They did. They secured funding and had the house demolished. Today, there's a public memorial on that site. It's there to acknowledge the lives that were lost and the trauma that occurred, ensuring that the location will always honor the victims, not the crime.
So Grate's arrest immediately blew the investigation wide open. It started pulling on threads that stretched back a decade and ultimately connected him to 5 murders.
Right.
So now we have to detail the confirmed victims: Stacey Stanley, Elizabeth Griffith, Candace Cunningham, Rebecca Lacey, and Dana Nicole Lowry. We need to document the facts of their cases across the 3 Ohio counties.
We should start at the site of the arrest, the Ashland house, because that's where the authorities found 2 victims right away.
The first victim found there was Stacey Stanley, who was also known as Stacey Hicks.
Stacey had been reported missing in the week right before Grate was arrested.
So it was a very recent case.
Very recent. And when they found her body at 363 Covert Court, the autopsy confirmed her cause of death. She was strangled.
And alongside Stacey Stanley, they also discovered the body of Elizabeth Griffith.
Elizabeth had been missing for longer, about a month, when she was found in the same house.
And the forensic findings were the same.
They were. The autopsy confirmed that Elizabeth Griffith had also been strangled to death. And these 2 discoveries, right there in the house, confirmed for authorities that they were dealing with a much wider pattern of homicide.
Not just a kidnapping.
Far from it. And Grate's own confessions, which he started giving almost immediately while in custody, were instrumental in solving the next set of cases in the next county over.
In Richland County.
That's right. And that's where we learn about Candace Cunningham. She was 29.
And her relationship with Grate was complicated.
It was an on-again, off-again dynamic that had gone on for about 5 years. And the police were able to find her so quickly because Grate himself led them to her body.
On the very day he was arrested.
On September 13th, 2016, he took them right to her.
And where was she found? What did Grate confess about her murder?
Her body was found behind a burned-down house in Richland County. He confessed to killing her in June of 2016, but the sources reveal the extreme nature of this murder.
The torture.
Yes. The reports state she endured around 3 days of torture before he killed her. That extended period of cruelty is a key indicator of the calculated control he exerted.
Her identity was confirmed a few months later.
The Richland County Sheriff's Office officially confirmed it was her in November 2016. And most chillingly, when Grate was discussing Candace Cunningham, he just dismissively referred to her as a problem.
The second case in Richland County, the case of Rebecca Lacey, is an example of how a serial killer's arrest can solve cases that were previously misclassified.
Rebecca Lacey's case was officially reopened specifically because of the detailed information Grate gave them.
Her body had been found much earlier.
Much earlier, in March of 2015. But at the time, her death was tragically ruled a drug overdose.
But that wasn't the truth.
No. Grate's confession revealed what really happened. He claimed he strangled her after she allegedly stole a tiny amount of money from him.
Just $4.
Just $4 from his workplace. And it just confirms this pattern of extreme violence rooted in perceived disrespect, or in this case, theft. It highlights that control was the primary motive.
And this pattern stretches back even further. Which brings us to the final victim identified, Dana Nicole Lowry, from a case in Marion County that had been cold for more than a decade.
This is, in many ways, the most significant resolution of the entire investigation. Grate confessed to killing a woman whose body was found in Marion County way back in 2007, though the murder itself happened in 2006.
And for 13 years, she was a Jane Doe.
For 13 long years. And the process of her identification is a really powerful example of how forensic science has evolved and just dedicated police work.
What were the steps they took to finally give Dana Lowry her name back?
Well, the first big breakthrough came from some advanced forensic techniques. In January 2018, they used something called isotope analysis on her remains.
And what does that do?
It analyzes the chemical composition of bones and teeth, and that can tell you the geographical region where a person lived and grew up. The analysis pointed strongly to her being from the southern United States.
A crucial clue.
A huge clue. And then the final piece of the puzzle came from a specialized group, the DNA Doe Project.
Using forensic genetic genealogy.
Exactly. And in June 2019, they were able to identify her
as Dana Nicole Lowry, 23 years old, from Minden, Louisiana.
Correct. And this work finally provided definitive closure. The sources tell us that at the time of her death, she was separated from her father and she had 2 very young daughters.
Just 1 and 5 years old.
1 and 5. And her identification confirmed that Grate's criminal activity went all the way back to 2006, making her his earliest known murder victim.
And the resolution of her case, 13 years later, it just underscores the profound importance of never giving up on these cold cases.
It provided an ending for a family that had spent years searching and waiting for answers.
So with the full scope of the crimes now clear across these 3 counties, Ashland, Richland, and Marion, we have to turn to the legal proceedings, which were incredibly complex.
They were because of the multi-county charges and, of course, the pursuit of the death penalty.
So after his arrest in Ashland, Grate was indicted on a huge number of counts.
A massive 23 counts. They included the most severe charges, of course. 2 counts of aggravated murder for Stacey Stanley and Elizabeth Griffith.
But it went beyond the homicides.
Oh, yes. He also faced kidnapping, multiple sexual assaults related to Jane Doe, aggravated robbery, burglary, tampering with evidence, a whole list.
And Grate's initial legal strategy was complicated almost immediately by his own actions.
It was. His court-appointed attorney entered a standard plea of not guilty on all charges.
But then Grate started talking to the press.
He did. He completely violated normal procedure and publicly confessed to all 5 murders in a press interview. This forced his defense team to completely change their strategy.
And they pivoted to arguing he wasn't responsible because of his mental state.
They filed a plea of not guilty by reason of insanity. But the court had a 2-step process to evaluate that kind of plea.
It's a critical distinction, isn't it?
It's crucial to understand. The first step was determining his competency.
Meaning, could he understand the charges against him and assist in his own defense?
Precisely. And on January 6, 2017, the court found that he was fit to stand trial. He was competent.
But that was just the first step.
The second step, which was addressed a couple of months later, was about the insanity plea itself. Was he so mentally ill at the time he committed the crimes that he couldn't tell right from wrong?
And what did the psychological evaluation conclude?
The evaluation came out in March 2017, and it declared that he was not insane when the crimes took place.
So while the psychiatrist acknowledged his childhood struggles,
the legal definition of insanity was not met. And as a result, his lawyers withdrew the insanity plea in April 2017, leaving him to face all the charges directly.
Now, given that he kept trying to talk to reporters about all the gruesome details of the murders from jail, how did the court try to manage that?
It became a serious problem, so serious that the defense and the prosecution actually had to work together on it.
They jointly requested a gag order.
They did, and it was granted. It was a necessary step to protect the integrity of the trial and stop Grate from contaminating the potential jury pool with these sensational details coming straight from him.
But even with the gag order, he still found a way to communicate his bizarre internal logic. He sent letters to a reporter.
Yes, to Megan Hickey at News 5 Cleveland. And this letter, it tries to lay out a motive, but it's a profoundly twisted piece of reasoning.
It offers a rare, if warped, look into his thought process.
It really does. He attributed his actions not to his own rage or desires, but to an institutional target. He blamed government assistance.
He claimed it took his victims' minds.
He wrote, and this is a direct quote, "They were already dead. Their minds were already dead. The state took their minds once they started receiving their monthly checks."
That's a classic mechanism of projection. He's taking the rage he felt from his own life and projecting it onto this system to rationalize dehumanizing his victims.
Exactly. He mentions his own minimal assistance, a $197 food card, and then compares it to the $700 that others were supposedly getting. By framing them as already dead or like zombies because of welfare, he creates this psychological distance.
It allows him to justify the violence.
It shifts the blame entirely away from his own predatory behavior and onto some faceless, corrupting government system, which is a common rationalization tactic for offenders who commit extreme acts.
Let's focus on that first and most significant trial, the one in Ashland County for the murders of Stacey Stanley and Elizabeth Griffith. The prosecutor there immediately sought the death penalty.
He did. The Ashland County prosecutor, Christopher Tunnell, was very clear. He said he was seeking the death penalty because of the depraved actions and the gruesome evidence in the case.
And that trial was highly publicized.
Very. Jury selection began in April of 2018.
But Grate didn't actually force the state to prove every single charge, did he?
No, that was a tactical move. On May 2, 2018, he pleaded guilty to 15 of the non-murder charges.
The kidnapping, the sexual assaults.
Yes, everything related to Jane Doe. This took those charges off the table for the jury, but it preserved his right to fight the aggravated murder charges.
But the evidence was overwhelming.
Completely. On May 7th, the jury came back with a guilty verdict on both counts of murdering Stacey Stanley and Elizabeth Griffith.
And the sentence.
On June 1st, 2018, Shawn Grate was sentenced to death.
They set an initial execution date, didn't they? The symbolic one?
They did. September 13th, 2018, the 2-year anniversary of his arrest. But that was immediately stayed because of the mandatory appeal process in Ohio for any death sentence.
So once that death sentence was secured in Ashland, the legal focus shifted to the other two counties, Richland and Marion.
Right.
Why did they then choose to go for life sentences instead of having their own separate, very expensive death penalty trials?
That's a pretty common legal strategy in cases like this that cross multiple jurisdictions. Once one county has secured a death sentence, the others often aim to expedite justice and just ensure a complete conviction record.
So in Richland County, for the murders of Candace Cunningham and Rebecca Lacey.
He pleaded guilty on March 1st, 2019.
And what were the sentences there?
For Rebecca Lacey's murder, he got life in prison without the possibility of parole. And then for all the other charges, including those related to Candace Cunningham, he got a consecutive sentence of 17 years to life.
The use of consecutive is important there.
It's very important. It ensures that even if the death penalty were somehow overturned on appeal, Shawn Grate would never be released from prison.
And finally, the oldest case, Dana Lowry's murder in Marion County.
It was a similar outcome. On September 11th, 2019, he pleaded guilty to her 2006 murder. He was sentenced to another life term without parole, plus an additional 16 years.
So by securing these guilty pleas, the state made sure he was held legally accountable for all 5 of his known victims.
Across all 3 jurisdictions, it closed the book on all of them.
Okay, so let's go back to the death sentence from Ashland. What's the current legal status of that, especially with the issues around the method of execution in Ohio right now?
It's a point of major legal friction. The initial appeals process ran its course, and on December 10th, 2020, the Ohio Supreme Court upheld the death sentence. They stated there was no mitigation or reversible error in the case.
He had an execution date scheduled.
He did, for March 19th, 2025. But that date has been delayed again because of ongoing legal challenges.
And the challenge now isn't just about his specific appeals. It's about the mechanics of execution itself.
That's the real gridlock. While Grate is still sentenced to death, Ohio officially stopped using lethal injection back in 2020. That was their standard method.
And state law doesn't currently permit another method.
Not explicitly. So methods like the electric chair or firing squad aren't authorized. This creates a kind of legal paradox. The sentence stands, but the means to carry it out are, for now, legally unavailable.
So until the state legislature acts, or the courts make a definitive ruling on an alternative method,
his execution status remains delayed and pending.
As we review all this material, the narrative that really comes through is defined by 2 things. First, a decade of successful evasion by a killer.
And second, The dramatic and definitive end to it all brought about by the courage of one single person. It's a remarkable study in how criminal accountability can sometimes work.
It really highlights how delicate that balance can be.
Huh.
Grate's confessions, the physical evidence, it was all directly triggered by Jane Doe's 911 call.
That single act was the catalyst. It didn't just lead to finding Stacey Stanley and Elizabeth Griffith. It provided the information that was needed to finally close the cases of Candace Cunningham and Rebecca Lacey.
And, maybe most significantly, it brought resolution to the oldest and most fragmented case of all, the identification of Dana Nicole Lowry after 13 years.
The resolution of that Marion County cold case is just a testament to perseverance and to technological progress. Without Grate's confession linking him to that 2006 crime, that case might still be unsolved.
But the fact that Dana was finally identified, using techniques like isotope analysis and the work of groups like the DNA Doe Project, it's incredible.
It shows that forensic science really can bridge those massive gaps in time and evidence, and it provided that crucial closure for her two young daughters and her family.
We've seen how complicated the whole legal process was, spread across 3 different county jurisdictions. If you take a step back and look at the whole picture, what's the critical lesson here about handling serial crime?
I think it's the absolute necessity of seamless cooperation between jurisdictions. Crimes that cross county lines, in this case Ashland, Richland, and Marion, they demand that law enforcement agencies pool their resources and their evidence as soon as they realize they have a central suspect.
And in this instance, that coordinated effort worked.
It did.
Yeah.
It ensured that Grate was held accountable not just for the crimes in the county where he was caught, but for the total scope of his violence across the state.
And as we end our comprehensive look at this material, we invite you, the listener, to reflect on that initial turning point. Just consider the sheer improbability of it all. That 5 long unsolved murders were brought to light and resolved entirely because of the singular, brave, and quick-thinking actions of one victim who just refused to succumb to terror.
Her courage was that unpredictable, necessary spark that ignited the entire legal process. It truly was the key to bringing resolution and some form of justice to so many families who had waited for over a decade.
Thank you for spending this time with us as we review this material.
Thanks for listening.